In this video, I'm going to be showing you how to make a professional grade working shop for your own Roblox game. If you follow this tutorial all the way to the end, you will have your own fully scripted shop just like this one. To start your shop, you're going to need to open up Roblox Studio, and if you have your own place, then you should open that one up already, but I'm just going to be using this empty base plate. Initially, we're going to need to insert a GUI. I will actually have included free UI for you to be using if you want to follow along on this tutorial with me, but if you have your own UI, that is something you will probably want to use for your own game because this UI might not match your theme. Okay, to make your UI, first, inside Starter GUI in the Explorer, insert object, screen GUI. This allows you to create UI that you can see on your screen when you load up into the game. Okay, we could call this, let's just call it game UI. And inside of that, we can insert a frame, which is a white background, which we can insert our UI elements into. This will be our main shop frame. So to center it, set our anchor point to 0.5, 0.5. We'll set our background transparency to 1 so that you cannot see this boring white background because we'll be inserting a actual image later. Our position can be set to 0.50, 0.50, which essentially centers it into the middle of the screen. And then next we'll set our size. How about 0.650, 0.750, which should be roughly a good size that will fill up a good portion of the screen. Okay, and with a little bit of editing, this should be a good UI size. Also, one thing I want to mention before we continue developing our UI is to go into the test bar on the top of your screen. Click on this device emulation, and you can set it to a actual computer desktop because the Roblox Studio window is not a realistic visual for what it will look like in the real game. When we set our device test to HD 1080 1920 by 1080, we can see what our screen will look like when you actually play the game on a computer desktop. Okay, so this is the frame, and I already have an image ready for use. So to start, we'll insert an image label, call it background, and if you are going to be using this UI, you can take it from the description. I have an image URL ready to go. So this will be what our UI looks like. Let's scale this all the way to fill the entire frame. So set the size to 1, 0, 1, 0, and background transparency to 1. So as you can see, I added a little bit of drop shadow. So we're going to increase the size of our image frame to about that much larger, which should actually fill in the real frame's borders a little bit better. All right. Next, let's add our exit button in. This can be an image button because you will be pressing this to close out of the UI. We could position it around right here for the actual game. Once again, I have an image already prepared. If you want to use these images, go ahead and check the description. Otherwise, you can have your own that you have made by yourself, which I do recommend if you're actually going to be making a full game out of this tutorial. Set our background transparency to 1. We'll be setting the size to about 0.1, 0, 0.1650. And it is important to note that we're using scale instead of offset in the size, as you can see, using scale and 0 for offset. If you use offset, it may look good on your screen, but it is actually a count of pixels, which means on different sized screens, it will not scale correctly. So make sure we're using scale on all of our sizes, otherwise the UI will be changing shape in other people's screens, and that will not be good. One thing we should also do is change the name of this frame inside game UI to just shop. Okay, so we already have a decent start. We have our background and our exit button, which we'll be scripting later, but we need some actual content. So this is where we're going to add a scrolling frame. Now, a scrolling frame is just a frame which you can put content inside of, and it allows you to scroll through it. So it's perfect for shops where there's going to be multiple pages worth of content for things that you can purchase. Add in a scrolling frame here, and this just position about how you would like it. Looks about good, because this is the part of the shop where you'll be purchasing item or selecting items to purchase. So in our properties, we'll remove the background, remove the border, and we'll actually increase the scroll bar's thickness a bit. There we go. So we have a little frame here to scroll. Oh, does not work when you click and drag, but in game you will be able to do that. And now to spice things up a little bit, we'll be adding a background to our scrolling frame. This will just be a nice little effect. So in your shop, insert object, text label. We'll call this content background because it will go behind the scrolling frame and will just be a nice little effect to shade in the background. We could scale it up like so. And using our plugin unit conversion, we'll set the scale and size all to scale. This way, when we change our screen, of course, not everybody is going to be playing on the same size screen. Now it will all look the same. In our content background, we can remove the text, properties, and we could set the background transparency to 0.5 and change the color to just a little bit of a dark gray. In our plugins, we can use Roundify to round out the corners of this box. Press Roundify. And now we have a little bit of rounded corners, which looks nice. So this is a pretty nice little trick to do when designing UI. Add a little background and roundify it. Now to add some more detail to our shop, we can add a title just here in the center using text actually. So insert a text label and we can call this title. Drag it to the center of our shop frame. Convert the scale and size to, the position and size to scale. And then in properties, we'll remove the background by setting the background transparency to 1. We will change the text to shop and press text scaled to increase the size. And then we'll be manually scaling this up quite a bit. Should be good. Move it back to the center. Now, the font we will be using in this case, of course, this is personal preference. I will be using Fredoka 1 because it looks nice and cartoony. Our color can be a cool, just a green. All right. And to make that look a little bit better, we can give it a drop shadow just by duplicating the text label. Call this title back. And move it down and to the side just a little bit. And set the color of this to a darker version. And then set the main title z-index in properties to 2. Now we have a nice effect with our text. And our title is complete. However, the title is kind of getting squished by all of our content, so we're going to be moving our content down a little bit. So select your scrolling frame, and this is just organization of the UI, content background, move that down as well. And now there's plenty of space for our title. You can drag down a bit, scale up. All right, that looks good. Okay, so if you didn't already know, the theme of the shop that I'll be making today is a pogo shop. So in this case, I'll just be calling the scrolling frame pogos. And we can actually duplicate this and call it products, because later on in the video, we will be showing you, or I will be showing you how to make your own products with Robux, and then this will just also be another category for different types of sales in your game. Right now, we can set the products to invisible in properties. So our shop is coming along. The next thing to do is add some shop content. So we're gonna have buttons to be able to press inside of our scrolling frame here. And if you couldn't tell what this is for, this will be a larger view of each button or each option, and we'll have a purchase button over here. Anyways, go into your content. I will be adding a frame. Sorry, to store our content. Move this up to the front. And just scale this to be inside. Actually, what we can do is just set the size to 1010 to fill out the canvas of our scrolling frame. And of course, set the position to 0000, and that way it fills it out entirely. Now I'll set the background transparency. And the reason I made this frame is so that I can use in objects something called a UI grid layout. This is a really useful tool for UI where you can simply insert, let's say, image buttons, and it will automatically lay them out for you. So if I duplicate this image button right now, it's going to be filling out the frame systematically, so I don't actually have to manually position them, as you can see. This is similar to what we'll be using for our actual shop. Anyways, I could delete all of these because those are not my image buttons. I have already made an image again for the content. So this is an image button. Move it to the front. Z index. And I'll be taking an image I've already made. Setting the background transparency to 1. And as you can see, it's really small, but you cannot change the size of the image from the actual image button properties. So we have to go into our UI grid layout and go to properties. In our appearance, we'll change the cell size, which is the size of each of the buttons, to about this by this. So 0.275 by 0.35 in scale. Right now they are really tall, but that's because our scrolling frame is too large. So we can go into the canvas size of our scrolling frame, which is basically how large it is, including the scroll option. Set the canvas size to about half of this length. Of course, if you are going to include more content, you can always increase the canvas size and then go into your UI grid layout and increase the or decrease the size of the buttons. For now, with that, this is a good size for the image. And we have about 2 to 3 rows worth of content that can be included in this shop. Since the UI grid layout fills all the way from the top left over, we can actually position our frame just a bit further. So on the X, about this far over, and down. Should be good. So we can call this image button, we'll just call it temporary because we don't have any content yet that is actually going to be filled in. And as you can see, when I duplicate this, it does fill in the shop pretty well. And we can scroll through that. Very nice feature. And we can edit the spacing a little bit. The cell padding can be not using offset. We want to use scale always. About this much. Okay, now when I fill in more content, it'll look like that, which is a nice evenly spaced out shop. All right, now that we have some content ready for our shop, let's fill in the other side over here. So right here in this slot, we'll just be having an image, and using code, we'll update the image's ID to present a larger version of the image that'll be shown on the actual button you can press. It'll show the image up here, and then down here it'll have a purchase button. So right now all that we need is an image label, and we'll just call it selection image. This we can position here and scale it up. Go to plugins, unit conversion, and set everything to scale. And we will actually be using a constraint here, which essentially sets everything to a ratio, or our size to a ratio. So if we add a constraint, I have a plugin for it, but you can also just add a UI aspect ratio constraint in the objects section. Add your constraint. For the aspect ratio of this image, we're going to be going just with a 1, so a square image. And scale with parent size should be good. If we just position this a little bit more centrally, we'll be all set. The background transparency to 1, so when we set our image, if there's any transparency, it won't be showing the background. All right, that's about all we need for this. Now for our shop purchase button, which will be down here. I also have an image for this. go ahead and insert an image button. Call it purchase. Go ahead and set the scale for everything and the background transparency to 1. Now I can load in the image, which I have already made, into the image slot of the properties. There we go. Now I can adjust the size a little bit to fill in this box. And make sure to put a text label, which will be the text just saying purchase on our button. Purchase. Set the size to 1010 to fill in the button. And then just set the background to transparency to 1. And scale the text up. I'll again be using the Fredoka 1 font. And when you have a situation like this, where the text is just going over, you can just set the size of the text label and move it in just how you want it to fill. That should be good. And I'll be using just white text with a little bit of a green hint. That's a nice little button there. And for future scripting purposes, we'll be duplicating this button, calling it equip, setting the text to equip, and we can make this invisible. So when you already own an item, the purchase button should not be there. It should instead be an equip button. Okay, so with our purchase button done, we just have a few more things to make. So to start off, a major part is the tabs that are going to go here on our shop. So we have the pogos, obviously, in one of the frames. But if you want to switch over to products, which can be another tab, then you will have completely new buttons. It'll just be a way to organize your shop better. So to start, we'll insert into the shop an image button. We can call this tab pogos. If you are not using pogos for your own shop, you can of course change the name. Just bring it down here, scale it up a bit. This will be just a button you press, which will set it to this frame, which is our pogos. And we're gonna do the same effect that we did with the shop, where we have the job shadow. So duplicate that effect and put it in your pogos tab. We can set the size and the position. All right. Make sure also to set your size and position to scale on your new image button. Okay, I also have an image pre-made for this, which I'll be using. Paste the URL in, set the background transparency to 1. All right. Now just adjust the size. The title and title back can be moved a bit. All right, and now just change your title to what you want it to actually say for your tab. In text, this will just say Pogo Sticks. All right. So this is just a tab button you can press. We'll duplicate this for the other tab, which will be called products. So I'll scale both of these down to fit better. And we'll call this one tab products and set the text. Now we have the product scrolling frame as well. We might have made some edits to the pogos frame, so I'll just delete this, duplicate the pogos frame again, and call it products. All right, this can be set to invisible for now. So things are coming along. We have tabs, content frames, a preview, purchase and equip buttons, but there's nothing to show actual money. So above the purchase button, there's going to be a text label that displays the cost of the item that you're going to be purchasing. All right, so we can insert in a text label. Okay, this will be called selection cost. Move it over here above the purchase button. Convert it to scale, and set the text to, we'll just say, Pogo 500. So in the actual script, we'll change it to say the actual name of the item followed by the cost of the item. Set the background transparency full. Move it to text scaled, and the font will be Fredoka 1 again. For this, I'll also be using white text. All right. That looks good. And for the design element of this, we're going to add an image that shows your unit of currency that it will be costing next to it. So obviously, shops have different ways you can buy stuff, some with Robux or in-game currencies. In this case, there's going to be gems, coins, or Robux to buy items with, and I'll have compatibility for all of those choices in the shop. We will set the text X alignment and properties to right, and that way it fills to the right of the frame. So if you're gonna change the text to something longer like this, it stays locked onto this right side, and that length or that position will not change no matter how short or long you make the text. And of course the text will be changing, so we need it to be stuck right there because our currency is going to go right here and it should be next to it. All right, you can insert an image label, and in the anchor point, which is just where it starts, what part of the actual UI element the position is calculated from, we can set the X to 1 and Y to just 0.5. Then position, we'll set, actually, no, you do not need to set the X to 1 because in our position, we can just set the X to 1 there and Y to 0.5, which will center it on the Y. There we go. We can change our background transparency and our size. We can go with 0.25 by 1. Sure. move it a bit over, and we'll use a constraint, the UI aspect ratio constraint, and just make it sure that it is square because that is the same aspect ratio as our icons that I will be using. So this can be called a gem because I'll use gems first. I, of course, have an image ready. Paste the URL. That's my little icon. And in this case, it's kind of small. So I'm just gonna scale. Oh, this should be like that. Scale up the image a bit. Drag it down because, yeah, that will look good. Now I'll duplicate this and call it Robux. I also have a icon for Robux. Just paste in this image. And this one's a bit bigger, so I can just scale it down a bit. Put it there. And the last unit of currency I have is gold, which I'll just paste in here. So, you can use whatever images you want, obviously, whatever currencies you want. It should match your game, of course. So we can just set these to invisible, and we could just keep gold out here for now. All right, now that we have our cost, we're pretty much done. One extra feature I'm going to be adding to our UI is a little display of how much gold you have and how many gems you have in this empty space up here, just to fill it in and make things look nice. Okay, to start, I'll be actually making a new folder in here. I'll just call it icons. This isn't necessary, but as you can see, there's a lot of elements here already, and it's going to be kind of difficult to navigate your Explorer if you have too many things just straight up under your main frame. So I'll just create a folder which will have all these elements in it to clear things up a bit. I'll be inserting an image button. This is my buy more coins button. So it's going to be next to our coins display, and when you click it, it'll change the actual tab to products, where there's going to be the option to buy more coins with gems. I'll set the image to something I already have saved. And the image color I'll set to a gold color. All right. And of course, set the background transparency and scale this down a bit. We'll be using the square aspect ratio, so add the aspect ratio constraint. All right, this looks good as a way to get more coins. Make sure also to convert to scale. All right. We can duplicate this gold image I have to show our unit. And add a text label. which we will update with a script to show the actual amount. It'll just be cold, cold. It's important to set our z-index of these to be in front of our text. Our text, we can just leave a placeholder there. Text scaled. Background transparency. I'll use the font we've already been using, Fudoka 1. And the text color, why not make it a gold as well? Okay. We're gonna set the text X alignment to left so that it fills in on the left side. And move this buy more coins over a bit. And finally, we'll add a little background just to smooth things out a bit. It'll just be a text label, which we remove the text on, remove the border on, and set the background color to like a dark gray with some transparency. Center that in there and set the size like that. Move the gold z-index up so that it's on top. And there we go. That's a nice little text counter for our gold, which will also have a way to redirect you to the products tab to buy more gold if you want to. And now we can just duplicate all of this because we'll have the same process with gems. Okay. Delete this. Duplicate the gem image that was already made for the cost. Make sure it's visible. And there. Okay. We'll call it gems. And change the text color to this. This is obviously just for my case. You guys use whatever currency you were planning on. And change the name of this to buy more gems. And set the color again. We can make sure to name these. Just call them BG. And with that effect, we are almost done with our shop UI. Obviously, we have to add content here, but I'll leave you guys to do that for your own games because obviously you're not going to be using the same content I have. And the only thing left to do is actually create a button on the side of our screen, which you can press to open this shop panel. So that's going to be really simple. Just outside of our actual shop frame, we'll insert an image button. And set it to scale. Set the background transparency. And then I will just be using just a shopping cart. Actually, we'll set the background transparency to 0. It looks better that way. And put a color for the background. Why not a yellow? Okay. That's looking good. I'll remove the border. So when you press this button, it'll open up the shop. You can close it. And then you'll be able to scroll here, select options, change the tab to change all of the options to a different category. This right here will show a preview of the item you've selected up here on a bigger screen. And finally, the coin display and gem display will have links to the products tab when you press plus. Alright, congratulations on making it to the end of this tutorial. You now have all the UI you need to make an advanced shop for your Roblox game. Make sure to follow the next tutorial where I show you how to code your shop to make it fully functional. Thank you for watching, this has been Comet, and I'll see you guys in the next video.